right, good morning, everyone. Great to be here in Rouen, and appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to come and attend this particular keynote. So my name is Anand Vaghela. I'm actually one of the product managers back in the Santa Clara office. And I wanted to start off by introducing you to the product management team. A lot of you've probably met a lot of the members of this team already, but we have a new face that joined the team a couple of weeks ago. So Rick Kalman, a lot of you've probably met him. He's been with FileMaker a long time, over 17 years now. He actually owns and runs the product department team or product management team, as well as the design team, and we have 4 members of design as well. So they're very well integrated back into engineering itself, and we work very closely with them. Sangeeta is actually new to FileMaker. She joined about 2 weeks ago, and she actually owns FileMaker Server, WebDirect, and our API offering moving forward as well. Robert Hursley is someone also who's been with FileMaker for quite some time, about 11 years. He started his career in FileMaker tech support and then moved into product management a couple of years ago. He's responsible for FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Go. And then myself, responsible for FileMaker Cloud, which we'll be talking about a bit later on today. So let me start off by just telling you a bit about me. You know, I know I've met some of you during US DevCon itself, and it's been a great honor to spend time with you. But a lot of you I've not met, so I want to use the next couple of slides just to introduce myself so you can get familiar with me. And you know, if there's anything you have as asks and needs, I'm happy to follow up with that. But it also hopefully builds a connection as we work on future things. We can also relate to that. So I started my career actually in the UK. I worked for a company called Zyratex. They were a management buyout through IBM. And they got acquired by Seagate about 5 or 6 years ago. But they were a great company. I got an opportunity to visit US customers quite a lot during that time. And then I transitioned to the US for a project in 2004. Now, ever since then, I've been stuck in the US as well, but more by choice than anything else. In 2008, I decided to change roles. You know, Zyratex was the only company that I had worked for. I wanted to try something different. So I actually joined NetApp, and they're a storage provider. And then 3 years ago, I decided to try something different as well, trying FileMaker. My background was always storage, and FileMaker is completely different. So I decided to try that opportunity out. And I think one of the things that really impressed me right from the get-go was the community itself. And when I refer to the community, is the people here in the room. You guys are so approachable where if we've got questions or we want to vet out ideas, that we can send you an email and we can get feedback very, very quickly. So I really appreciate the feedback you guys give us and the relationship we're building there. This is me and my family. I've got 2 little girls back in the US, and this is a picture taken at Disneyland Los Angeles, not the Paris one, where we celebrated Halloween. And if you've not been there during Halloween, it's a great experience because they deck it all out. I enjoy playing golf in my spare time. So when we launched FileMaker Cloud in July, I got the opportunity to go over to Japan and help the team there from a training perspective and get ready for the launch. So I actually played on a golf course right next to Mount Fuji. In the background there, you see our sales director, Toru. And if you guessed it, I've got a Tiger head cover because I'm a big Tiger Woods fan still. So the other thing I enjoy doing and watching a lot is soccer, or in Europe we call here is football. Who else watches football and supports PSG in the room? No one? Okay, because my next joke was going to be I convinced Neymar to join PSG, but I don't think anyone would have appreciated that. But while I was in Japan, I bumped into Neymar. He was at the same hotel, and a very approachable guy. I was actually joking with him that don't join Manchester United, and ended up he goes and joins PSG. But it was amazing. Just in the hotel lobby. You know, there was a span of people coming out of the elevators, and one of them was him, and I got the opportunity to take a picture with him. But, you know, that was Neymar to start with, and then I looked over and I see Gerard Piqué, who's plays for Barcelona and is a Spanish international, and he's huge, right? But I got so excited that the picture got fuzzy because I started shaking. And I was like, wow, this is just incredible. I just bumped into Neymar, took a picture with him, bumped into Gerard Piqué, took a picture with him. Can it get any better? And I look over the hallway and I see an individual who's very low dressed, no chains, no rings. When you look at Neymar, he's got earrings and everything, he's really putting a fashion statement out there. And I see someone in the side, and it's Leo Messi. And you can see the picture gets even worse now, right? Because I'm just like too excited at this point. But it was great to see that. Unfortunately, the team I support in the UK is Liverpool, and he definitely will not join us there, considering his wages are quite incredible. So let's talk about the FileMaker platform. So a lot of you've probably seen this slide. We share this at DevCon in the US quite a bit. And, it really starts off with the Draco engine being our core center of the product. Around that is really our product line itself. We focus, first of all, on FileMaker Pro and Pro Advanced. And if we look at Pro and Pro Advanced, that's really the builders of the product. That's how you create your first custom apps, and we put a lot of investment and time into that. We then go around the wheel and we look at FileMaker Server. FileMaker Server has been a product that's been shipping for quite some time, available on Mac and Windows. And it really gives you the opportunity to manage your deployment strategy. Is it I manage a FileMaker Server in my own office, in my own data center? Do I work with a hosting provider who you have a server environment themselves? Or do I deploy it into an infrastructure as a service provider like AWS or Microsoft Azure? So it really gives you control of how you want to manage that deployment. We then go on to FileMaker Go. And I think when you saw the slide from Brad talking about the wave of mobility, it's a very, very key component to our strategy. And we've put more time and effort now into FileMaker Go as well with some of the features that have been coming out, like iOS SDK that I'll talk on a bit later. WebDirect is also new to the platform, a couple of years old, but it really gives you the capability of now, without having a client deployed through a desktop or through a mobile device, you have accessibility through a browser that's ready to be available to all the people. Finally, FileMaker Cloud is new to our platform. It's just over a year old, and I'll talk about that later on today, but it really gives you now a choice of a different deployment strategy. Either you go with FileMaker Server, great for on-premise, great through a hosting provider, or that you deploy through an infrastructure as a service provider, but it's steps that you control. With FileMaker Cloud, it's a much more minimal administrative overhead and simplified deployment process that we'll walk through as well. So you really choose your deployment strategy based on the business needs or your customers' needs. If we talk about platform priorities, we really focus in on 6 areas. The first one we start with is security. And, I can't highlight enough how much we focus on security. In fact, every market requirement document we do, which is known as a MRD, every product requirement we do, which is known as a PRD, we highlight security of how can we go and improve this. A good example is SSL certificates. We made a change around this during FileMaker Cloud, and we want to basically make a change on that around FileMaker Server. So you'll be seeing something coming to the platform in the near future that we do include a component of an SSL certificate that then you can go and renew or purchase as well. We want to simplify that approach. The second thing is development. Again, I started off with FileMaker Pro being the core builder of our product. Without that product, you're not going to be able to build your first custom apps or continue to build custom apps. So it's a big focus area for us. And we really zone in on developers like yourselves' experience that we can simplify and give you more productivity back. But a change that we're starting to make in our roadmap is we want to tap in to literally what Douglas showed us, that POV. We want to tap into citizen developers. We want them to come to the FileMaker platform, choose a custom app, start building it and get some experience in it very quickly and early and see some rewards. From that, their journey continues and they continue to expand their offering. So we're focusing some effort on simplified user experience. Do a lot of you remember a product that we had before called Bento? Any raise of hands for Bento? Okay, good amount. So, Bento, with the feedback that we've been hearing, was a great product. It was very simple to use. The only challenge was it wasn't integrated back into our Draco engine. So what we're starting to focus on is taking some components of Bento and bringing them into the platform. But we don't lose visibility and focus on our experienced developers like yourself. So you'll see that there'll be components of Bento, bring people into the platform, and features more for advanced developers as well. Mobility, Brad again touched on this during his session there. It's core to our strategy for the fact that FileMaker Go can run on iOS, for iPad, and iPhone. We made investments around iOS SDK, giving you capabilities of native apps, and we're continuing to look at features that can expand that particular offering as well. We touched on deployment. Really, you choose your strategy. Do you want to deploy on an on-premise server through Windows or Mac, or choose FileMaker Cloud? And FileMaker Cloud is running on AWS. We openly talk about that, and you purchase it through AWS Marketplace. And in the demo I'll show you, we walk through that. Integration. Again, I think from the POV that you saw and the examples that Brad talked about, REST API is an area that we're focusing on more and more. We introduced REST API in the last release of FileMaker 16, May of this year. It is still a trial, and it's going to remain a trial for a bit longer, but then we will bring a license model in play to it as well. But it really brings it to industry standards, more importantly. It allows integration with other applications that are on the market just to simplify things and make FileMaker more aware within the community as well. Performance. So performance is also something we look at seriously for every release. When we come out with FileMaker 15, 16, 17, we have that performance benchmark that we need to look at to make sure we're shipping still on par. But we're making some investments around page level locking in the near future that you'll start seeing to the platform as well. So let's switch over to FileMaker Cloud. And if you're familiar with FileMaker Cloud, we've actually done 3 rollouts of the product. We started in the US and Canada back on September the 27th last year. We added 2 regions at that time, being US East and US West. We then on March the 7th rolled out to EMEA by adding Ireland and Frankfurt as well. And then more recently, being July the 10th, we actually added Japan, Australia from an Asia Pacific perspective, and we added the Canadian region as well. We didn't introduce Canada because it wasn't available during the Americas launch. AWS made that region available later, so we implemented that. So we now have 7 regions globally for FileMaker Cloud. And this rollout took a 10-month period. We basically focused on every 4 to 5 months doing an update. Now the rollout just wasn't those 7 regions. What we did was we took an opportunity to also add newer features to the release. For FileMaker Cloud, we don't run a waterfall development methodology. We run an agile development methodology. What that's allowed us to do is look at the backlog that we have of features, look at the interest that we're getting from customers, look at pain points that we're hearing about, or the way the market is moving. We also look at features that AWS itself brings out. If some of you attended or watched their reInvents, last year they had like 435 features come out to market. Not all of those benefit us, maybe 1 or 2. So we really look at our backlog to prioritize what makes more sense to put into these releases. A good example is when we did the EMEA launch, we changed our backup strategy compared to what the initial release was in 1.0 for US and Americas. And it was purely because we were starting to get some feedback that, hey, I don't want to download an entire data set. I want to just download a single solution, and because that's the only one I need to make a change. So it's simple things like that. We also made a change around SSL certificate management during the July launch that I'll talk on a bit later. So let's talk a bit about adoption of FileMaker Cloud. So this slide shows you incremental growth based on the number of instances or environments of FileMaker Cloud that have been running since we launched. Now, based on the company that we report into being Apple, I can't give you the exact number here for financial reasons. But I can share with you two numbers. The first number I can share with you is we're averaging an 18% growth month over month for FileMaker Cloud. That's based on the subscription model we have, being that you can bring your own license, so convert your license from server to cloud, or buy a new license from FileMaker for FileMaker Cloud. Two is you go to AWS Marketplace and you purchase an annual or an hourly subscription. So those are the license models there. The second number is we're seeing about a 21% growth month over month, where a customer is going directly to AWS Marketplace, finding FileMaker Cloud, and then purchasing an annual subscription. And we start looking at these customers, we actually see them as new customer wins to the FileMaker platform. A good example is a customer that I got to know a couple of months ago who's based in Atlanta. They design and they manufacture gardening tools. And they have a number of salespeople in the field, but what they identified was these salespeople were going out and giving estimations and quotations, but they were all doing it a bit different. There was no standardized process. It was very paper-driven, which resulted to scattered information if you go back to our positioning statement. So their CEO wanted to address this, and he set out 3 requirements. The first requirement was put a process in place that is standard across the board. The second requirement was mobility. He wanted each sales rep to have an iPhone or an iPad and basically perform the quotation right there in front of the customer and give it to the customer via email. It resulted to a much faster closure of sales deals and more open communication. The third requirement was it had to be a cloud offering. They had other tools and applications that were running in the cloud. They did not want to invest in managing a environment in their office and getting resources behind that. So they actually started their search on, hey, let's start with some sort of database solution. They went to AWS Marketplace and they looked in the database category. The first hit that came up was Teradata. Then FileMaker Cloud, FileMaker Cloud, FileMaker Cloud, and then Oracle, and then SAP. And that intrigued them, that why is FileMaker Cloud up there from a ranking perspective with some very high-profile enterprise customers? And then the other thing that struck them is the price point. Teradata is like $6,000 a month, whereas FileMaker 5 users is $888 for the entire year. So that really struck them. They decided to actually do a purchase. They didn't even do a 15-day trial. He knew that this is a new journey for him once he did his research, that it's going to take him some time to actually develop. So he purchased the product and he started developing it, shared it with other members in his team, and they now have it in production. And starting to see the rewards that he had initially illustrated. So that's just one example of how new customers are finding us through an AWS channel and getting experience with the FileMaker platform. Let's now talk about how else FileMaker Cloud has helped our customers since we've been in market for about 12 months now. The first one is around WAN performance. Again, I want to refer to another customer who's actually in Belgium. They're a small record music label company. And they have a server in their Belgium office, and things were working pretty well. The challenge was the owner of the business was the only one who actually goes to the office. They had remote workers across Europe who had music and collaborated on music and were all uploading to that one server. So if that individual was on the road or traveling and something happened to that server, he had to phone someone at home, go in the office, restart the environment. It wasn't that effective. The other thing it was a bottleneck, right? From a performance perspective, they were basically connecting to that local server in Belgium based on the remote location. So when we announced FileMaker Cloud for EMEA, he decided he wanted to try it out. He took his FileMaker server license and did a BYOL to FileMaker Cloud. We give a 30-day grace period where he can keep running FileMaker Cloud and FileMaker Server as part of 1, evaluation, 2, data migration as well from point A to point B. So 30 days passed, they were still running the environment for FileMaker Cloud, and what they actually noticed was performance gains. Their users across Europe connecting in were basically saying, hey, this thing's responding way more faster than we realized previously. And it's purely because they were now using the infrastructure of AWS, which is a much larger ecosystem. They initially really wanted to go into it to simplify manageability. They didn't want to manage restarting the environment themselves by someone physically going to the device or managing backups. So when they read about that, that was their initial journey going into FileMaker Cloud. Setup, deployment, and manageability. Now, I'll show you this as part of a demo, but we refer to this as speedy deployment in terms of our messaging. What it really allows you to do is when you go to Marketplace and you select the product, you go through about 4 screens as a setup process where you enter an email, you select your instance type, and then it's a click, click, click operation. But what that does is it installs the operating system for you, being Linux, and it installs the FileMaker components for you as well. And at that point, you're just really sitting back and you're waiting for that instance to come up. Now, once it's come up, you complete a final email setup. But what you can see, it's very simplified. Now, Marketplace is still very targeted towards IT individuals versus citizen developers, but that's some messaging where we created videos to help with that ease of transition. The other area is manageability. So I showed you earlier, we've done multiple rollouts of FileMaker Cloud. That means a new version that has come out with new features and capabilities. What we've done is we've simplified manageability in order for you to get the latest version running. When you log into the Cloud Admin Console, you'll see a version of the FileMaker Cloud environment. If there is a new version available, you'll see an update button. When you click that update button, your instance that you're running on spins down. In the background, another instance spins up. But your data and your configuration is sitting on a separate volume with AWS. So when that new environment comes up, we just simply reattach it, and it's about a 10-minute operation, but basically results to your data and your configuration is protected and your business operations continue again. Just because of that mechanism, we're seeing about an 80% adoption of the field that is running the latest version of FileMaker Cloud. So they basically get an email notification from AWS that there's a new version available. Finally, affordability. So I mentioned to you we're running on a Linux OS, and that itself gives a big benefit from a cost analysis. And we're starting to get feedback of how affordable FileMaker Cloud is compared to other environments that they've been running in the past. And I'll share with you an estimate on pricing there as well. So there are still areas to improve on for us. One of the biggest feedbacks we got when we launched in the US and EMEA was that people liked the 90-day trial certificate we included. The challenge was renewing that certificate. Going through Komodo, going through all those screen options was a bit of a challenge for people. So we decided to make a change around that, and we made a change in our July launch. And we really simplified the options that you select, as well as the walkthrough that you need to do. So the way it happens now is that 30 days before that 90-day trial certificate expires, you see a renew button. When you click on that renew button, it brings you to the FileMaker store. From the FileMaker store, you select a 1, 2, or 3-year SSL certificate. Select, let's say, 1 year. You enter your credit card information. Once you've done that, on the Cloud Admin Console, you'll see 3 notifications. The first one saying, hey, your order's being processed. The second one is that your order is now being processed through Komodo, because we're doing a back office handshake with them as well. The very last notification is import, and that's it. Your system will restart and come back up. But it's a much more simplified operation. And typically, when you click on that submit of the order to once you get the Komodo's responsive coming back, it's about a less than a 30-minute operation, but you only need to do 3 clicks there. Marketplace trial and hourly. I should have started earlier, but how many of you have evaluated FileMaker Cloud since we launched it? Just a raise of hands. Okay, a couple. Some of you may have run into the trial issue where by the end of the month you get a very large bill because it's running an hourly subscription. And that's messaging that we've been giving AWS as well. And we've created a best practice video as part of this as well. But this is something that AWS controls. Their business model is very much driven around hourly and on-demand compute services. But it's changes that they're looking to make. But from our part, we wanted to be very clear of how that model specifically works. So 15 days is the trial period. If you cancel within that 15-day period, then you're fine. There's no additional charges. If you do run over the 15 days, AWS is informing you, but basically you're running an hourly subscription at that point. And it's something you can basically control the cost on by starting and stopping the EC2 environment itself. So let's talk a bit about future of what's coming next for FileMaker Cloud. So if you recall back to the Draco chart that I showed, all the icons were blue except FileMaker Cloud, which was like a pinky purple color. And that's purely because FileMaker Cloud is still a 15 code base from a platform perspective. 16 clients can still work with it. But later this month, we're going to make an update to FileMaker Cloud. So if you're an existing subscriber, you will get an email from AWS that there's a new version available, and we'll obviously do our marketing push behind it as well. But the first thing we're doing is, by making it 16, is you can leverage the 16 features that are available for the platform. Print to PDF, for example. OAuth that we're putting in where you can work with Google, Microsoft, and AWS. So that's going to be the first component that we do. The second thing we're bringing in is data APIs. It's trial on the platform today, and we will want to leverage that for FileMaker Cloud. This is the 5th DevCon we're doing in EMEA over the last 2 weeks. And I've been amazed in terms of how many people are talking about data API and how many sessions have been running on it. And I think it's an exciting journey that we're setting on as well. The final thing we're bringing into play is admin API. Better example of that is server-side scripting. That's been missing from FileMaker for quite some time from a cloud offering perspective. So we're bringing that to market as well. It will also be a trial initially, and then we'll introduce it into the platform further down the roadmap. But what I'm excited about with admin API is a particular FBA that I got to talk to in the US. And he shared a problem statement with us where he's now developed a script with admin API and basically able to execute against. And the problem statement he shared was they offer FileMaker Cloud as a service to their customers. So basically they set up the environment for them, they get the SSL certificate done, and then they give them a monthly report of how they're actually using FileMaker Cloud. And the monthly report focuses on 2 things, for example. One is the number of users that have accessed it every day, every hour. The second thing is the databases that they're using. Now, when you have one customer going in every hour, not too bad, right? But still manual effort. But what about if you were managing 30 customers? And this is the challenge that they were starting to face. They were looking at multiple customers that they were managing, and they wanted to give this reporting to. So with Admin API, we shared with them a sample script. What they were doing was they were basically pulling information from each of those 30 environments. And it was simply by an admin API command. They would open up the admin API, they would query the databases and the users, and then using data API, they would actually pull that information. Now we are going to make sample scripts available as part of the release that you see later this month. But the people that are in ETS already, it's unbelievable how much they've already been playing with admin API and developing their own scripts. So I'm sure they'll be sharing those within the community as well. So what I want to do for the next 10 to 15 minutes is actually walk you through a deployment of FileMaker Cloud, and I'll share with you some pricing. So let's first go to AWS Marketplace, is where you purchase the product. So I'm going to bring up a browser here. I'll make the screen bigger. So at the top, we'll search for FileMaker Cloud. And you see we've got product listings listed there. And I'm going to select 5 users. So you get an overview about the product itself. You get a description, you get the highlights, what services that we're using, and then support information. On the right-hand side, you see the regions that FileMaker Cloud is available in, and here are the 7 regions that I talked about a bit earlier. Further down, you get introduced to pricing itself. So the first thing you get introduced to is hourly pricing and annual pricing. Hourly pricing is shown in the second column here, starting at 99 cents an hour for a 5-user subscription pack. If I switch it to annual, it's $888 US pricing. And when you compare it to hourly subscription, it's about a 90% saving. If you do the ROI, it's about 37 days. If you left an hourly running for 37 days, it equates to you basically purchasing an annual subscription. So let's go back to hourly. You also see the compute types that we have available for FileMaker Cloud for 5 users. And you see the AWS pricing for that compute type, which is basically on-demand pricing at that point. Really, this is an information page. That's all it is. So what you need to do is just click on continue. Now, I'm an existing subscriber, so I see the continue button. If you are a brand new subscriber, you would see accept software terms. Now, when you do accept those terms, you're just accepting software terms. You're not being charged anything at that point. So we simply click on continue. You then come to a second screen where you've got to click, from a user perspective, usage instructions. When you click that, you see information about the steps that you will need to complete. So you could use this as one guide, or the help guide that we have available, or the videos that we actually have available. The action you need to do is choose the region you want to deploy FileMaker Cloud to, i.e., where do you want to keep your data? So I'm going to select Ireland as a region here. And that now brings up a new screen where we start a stack creation process. Now, the first step for you is already done, and there's 4 steps that we need to go through. We've already put, because you selected the island, we put that template in for you already. You simply click on next, and you come to specify details. This is the page out of the 4 that needs the most input. You've got to give it a name. So I'm going to say France. I can spell DEFCON. I'm going to give it my email address. And then there's instance type. Remember, we had 5 on the first page. By default, we select 1. A T2 medium, 5 users is more than enough. We can change that, and I'll show you how we change that later. So I'm going to leave that as the default. And then you have something called key pair or key name. You set this up when you set up your AWS account. So when you set up your AWS account, once that's done, you go to EC2 and you click on key pair. Basically, you only need to do this once for the region you're going to deploy in, and it's really a security pairing between with your instance. So if I click on the drop down, I had one that I set up earlier, so I just specify that. I click next, and I come to an options screen now. This option screen is purely as the title says. I can choose to set up tags. So if I have multiple instances, like 30 or so, and I want to find these instances more easy, then I would just select, put a tag in there. But I'm just going to click next. And now you come to a review page. You've got the titles from the left-hand side where you're basically reviewing all the settings that you put into there. So it's purely a review page. The only thing you need to do is acknowledge and click create. Now, when you click that create button, what happens is the Linux OS is getting installed and the FileMaker components are getting installed. Once that's done, you get an email saying, welcome to FileMaker Cloud. You have to enter your AWS account number. You set up a host, you specify a host name, you set a password, and you click submit. At that point, we're just doing the final steps of the installation. But this end-to-end process is about 20 minutes. So in 20 minutes, you will have a full environment that is up and running. Now, when we were in Japan, we got some feedback from we had press analysis, press interviews coming in. And we had a number of them come in. And there was one particular person that came in who was very familiar with AWS, and they had done their homework on FileMaker Cloud. They had already played with it. And the feedback that they gave us was that we really simplified the deployment process. They also tried to implement or purchase software from other database categories, but it was a much more complex workflow. So what we use here is a service from AWS called CloudFormation. You can see there's a lot of technical terms there, so it's not for everyone. That's one of the reasons why we shot the videos, to make that flow as simple as possible. But we've really taken out as much of the flow that allows you to make a selection on and get potentially confusion on, where we've simplified that workflow. The final thing I want to share with you is pricing. And I was talking to someone at dinner about this last night, in fact, where it's been a challenge for people to understand how much is the AWS service from a pricing perspective, because it's a variable cost and it's really based on usage. Whereas FileMaker subscription pricing is much more simple. It's an annual subscription. You're buying 5 users, 10 users, whatever that number is, and you pay that from an annual perspective. So as part of this stack creation process, they do share with you an estimated price, purely from the AWS services perspective, not the subscription perspective. So I'm going to click on cost here, and it brings up something called a simple monthly calculator. You can Google this. It's available. It's owned by AWS, and they make this available to everyone. What you can see is the one thing we selected as part of our CloudFormation process was the EC2 instance. It's already picked that up. And if I go to my estimated bill, basically that T2 medium instance running in Ireland is about $37 US. That's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, the thing that it's not picked up is how much storage do we need. So if I go back to my services tab, I want to change my region to Ireland so we can be completely price comparable here. If I go to EBS, that's known as Elastic Block Storage. That's the storage that we use. We're going to put in 40 gig here. So remember, I was at about just under $37. Now with 40 gig, I've gone to $41. Basically, it's just over 10 cents a gig from a storage perspective that AWS charges. The final thing you've got to think about is data transfer. So every time you're pulling information out of AWS, that's known as a data transfer. Similar concept in the US as a cell phone provider. Every time I'm using the internet, I'm taking data out. So in the data transfer field, we're going to put a number in for data transfer out. And we're going to put in about 10 gig as well. Now my pricing goes up to $41.81, just under $42 a month for running a cloud environment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think once people start realizing that, hey, there's this calculator available and it's really based on usage. If I now decide to stop the instance over the weekends, it's going to be even more cost effective for me as well. The other thing we've started noticing customers do, especially the ones that are running an annual license subscription, is that they've locked in and they've said, okay, this is working well for me. I can get even more cost sensitive as well. So the most expensive component out of this that you saw was the EC2 environment. The storage was very reasonable. The data transfer was very reasonable. So what AWS has is something called reserved instances. Basically, you're locking into a particular instance type for 1 year or 3 years. And here we're running an on-demand, but if I choose a 1 year where I pay nothing up front, I still get a bill every month that's fixed. For a T2 medium, I save about 25%. My instance cost goes from $36 to $26. And my overall bill goes to about $32. So that's another option that you can also evaluate. Let's quickly go over to the FileMaker Cloud Admin Console, where I can show you how the instance changes as well. So let me make this a bit bigger. So once I get that welcome email, I mentioned to you earlier that I enter my AWS account number, I specify a host name, and I enter a password. The environment's complete setup. I then see this for the very first time. So I log in with that email address that I used to set up the account, and I log in with the password that I set. And I click on sign in, and you see the FileMaker Cloud Admin Console that we call CAC. Now, this was completely rebuilt when we introduced FileMaker Cloud last year. What we're also going to do is take this look and feel of the console, and we're going to bring it to FileMaker Server as well. So that's something you're going to see in the near future as well. So from a look and feel, it'll be very much the same. Functionality will obviously be a bit different for FileMaker Server. But you get an overview of your subscription pack. This is a different instance that I set up, which was for 10 users. You can get a breakdown of how many of them are Pro, Go, or WebDirect. You get information about the version of cloud you're running. And as I mentioned, if there's a new version, you'll see an update button right here. And you get information about the environment itself. Here's the 40 gig volume. I can get an idea of how much of that I'm using. I get system stats of CPU, memory, as well as network. Now we have some intelligence built in the background. We call it a robot, where if your CPU, based on your usage, is exceeding 80%, we actually alert you through a notification. And that notification will tell you that, okay, you're exceeding here, you've got to take some action. Now, either you dismiss it, or you can change that instance type. And you'll see an update button in that notification. And the way you change that instance type is it brings you to an instance page. You can see I'm running a T2 medium instance here, and here are my here are my other 4 instances that I can choose from. So I'm not having to go back to AWS to make any changes. I can do it right directly here through the Cloud Admin Console. Now, what's very simple again is I see the pricing from AWS. This is an API call that we do back to AWS. We roll it up to a monthly number. Still, it's an on-demand price. You simply click on change, and you will click OK. What will happen is the existing instance will spin down, the new instance will spin up, and then your data configuration gets re-intact. So we've got a bit more time, and I'm going to invite Brad and Doug back up as well, and we'll open the floor up for any questions to what you saw this morning. Doug, do you want to just recap?
Anand,
yeah.
You showed the cost for downloading data, but would you also need to consider the upload cost for uploading data?
Yeah, good question.
That's okay.
Yeah. So the cost to put data into AWS is actually free. There's no upload charge itself. And that's pretty clever business marketing or business positioning by them, right? They want you to put as much data as you want up there. It's just when you pull it down, they charge you for it through that data transfer. Good question. There's one at the back there.
It's about SSL certificates.
Yeah.
I want to know why you choose Komodo and not having something like free certificates from
Let's Encrypt.
Yeah.
Good question. So, Komodo, our IS&T organization uses Komodo itself, and we have a good relationship with them. So it was a good strategy and approach to leverage someone that we're familiar with and we're comfortable with. We talked a lot about Let's Encrypt. The fact that it's free is a big advantage itself. But what we have to do is we have to go through a number of security checkpoints for every product that we release. And Let's Encrypt was not seen from our scanning perspective as something we should leverage itself moving forward. So that was the whole reason and rationale behind it, and we decided with Komodo at that point. Probably not. Purely for the fact that it's Let's Encrypt and they've got a different service and business model there as well. So from a FileMaker Cloud perspective, it would be with Komodo. We're also evaluating people like GoDaddy. We also know that AWS itself is bringing out its own service certificate management, and that's something we could probably leverage in the future as well.
I got another question.
Yeah.
It's about the admin API. Is it something we will have on server version 2?
Absolutely. So with FileMaker 17, when that comes out, which as you know, we're on a yearly release cycle, the admin API will be for FileMaker Cloud and for FileMaker Server as well.
Et c'est la semaine prochaine, le 24 octobre pour les FBA et le 25 pour tout le monde. En fait, vous avez reçu les emails pour un webinaire de présentation dans lequel il y aura une présentation de la nouvelle version du serveur pour la 17, avec l'intégration du Data API et de l'admin API dedans. Des questions en français? Non, même pas aucune? Vous avez rien demandé? Ah, monsieur Julie.
So we totally understand the position you have about having the end customer provisioning the AWS instance and having the licensing and so on directly through you, and we totally get it. Is there any chance you are going to work on a system to help us? You mentioned previously the possibility to use the API to have a better overview of a farming of multiple instances, but is there any chance we are going to see an AWS layer for hosting provider?
For partners.
We know the model of hosting provider is going to change, and we totally get it. I mean, but even though we will provide support to our customers, and having scripts is one layer, but is there any chance we are going to have an AWS layer to administer and to be delegated some power about that?
Yeah. From our strategy and roadmap perspective, and it's a good question, we're not planning any other layers there purely because it's fundamentally the owner of the AWS account that has primary responsibility, right? So we don't engage on that perspective. I think what we're just starting to see, and you touched on it as well, is there's a service component layer with FBAs where they offer consulting, they offer development, and then they offer a hosting package as well. That hosting package might be, hey, here's a data center with FileMaker Server, or it's FileMaker Cloud, for example. So purely based on the business case that the customer needs has, they position it that way. So I think from our perspective, the model is going to sort of remain as is, and it's really down to the FBA to manage. What we're seeing is FBAs, especially in the US that I've been talking to, is they set it up in their account. Then they basically invoice the customer once a month or yearly, whatever it is, that, hey, this is the service it's going to cost you. But fundamentally, the resource is staying under their account versus the end customer's account.
License-wise, isn't there a problem? We have to declare, and we are supposed to have the end user being the owner of the license and so on. It's no problem for you if the hoster is taking the instance under his name
Yeah.
and reselling the service.
Right.
To your perspective, it's no problem? Okay, that was not our understanding of the first discussions we had with your teams.
Okay, so I'm not sure on the license of who fundamentally owns that, but from the examples I saw, the customer was getting the license, so it's under their name, the license itself, but the service component where they were billing them for the compute services was separate.
So if I'm right, it's only possible with the bring your own license. So
Yeah.
you have to make them buy the license.
Correct.
And then you do the bring your license
Yeah.
and then you take the instance under your name. Okay.
Yep.
Il y a aussi parfois, Amazon aussi a fait une modification au niveau de la gestion des comptes, hein, où en fait avant quand tu créais un compte principal, toutes les personnes qui étaient en dessous de ce compte ne pouvaient pas être enlevées du compte principal. Hein. Et ils ont fait une mode il y a quelques mois qui permet à un FBA de créer en fait un client dans son compte principal. Hein, et si le client veut partir, en fait, il peut lui créer un compte principal pour lui. Ils ont fait ça il y a 6-7 mois, je crois. Je sais que Gilles Rocher a pu faire des transferts plus faciles.
And if you want examples of FBAs that we know back in the US that have been successful this model, let me know, and we can do an introduction there. Okay. I think someone else had the mic. Yep.
Can we download a single FileMaker backup from the cloud?
Yes, you can. So let's just say you have 5 custom apps up there. The way the backups work is a snapshot occurs every 20 minutes. So any changes that occur during that 20 minutes, we take a snapshot. We also take a backup every night. So as long as there's no users connected, we call that a preserved backup itself. So we put it into a bucket. Now, let's say 5 or 6 days later, time clock moves forward and you want to restore one of those backups. You can select from a snapshot or preserved backup. You will see the 5, and then you select the file you want and you just download it and you've got that backup.
But when I mean backups, is I get back the file on my Mac directly,
Yes.
not a restore on the cloud.
No. So we actually did initially have the mechanism of the restore, but that basically was also, we were putting the power in where you were basically destroying your live environment itself. So it's safer where we give you the capability to download it first locally, make your changes, and then upload it or replace your file. No one wants to ask Brad questions?
Well, it was just one more question about the cloud. We don't have actually a web server with the cloud service. And
Yeah.
I think it's really missing because we have a dedicated server, and with the cost of quite what we may have with virtual Windows server, and we don't have all the services.
Yeah, no, that's something we're aware of and we're looking at from a product feature strategy perspective.
Pour ceux qui ont vu, alors il y a Jesse Burnham qui était en Europe, qui a fait une petite tournée. En fait, il a fait des vidéos justement pour aider en fait les personnes qui ont comme vous des demandes, hein, de dire je voudrais FileMaker Cloud, hein, et la partie Linux du web server est contrôlée. Hein, et en fait, lui, il a le manière la plus simple. Il a dit vous créez une instance Linux sur Amazon, hein, la version la plus simple, hein, qui coûte c'est même pas $5 par mois. Donc il y a très peu elle fait pas grand chose, mais c'est juste pour faire tourner des services web. Hein. Et en fait, il dit c'est beaucoup plus simple, hein, parce que l'avantage de la version Linux qu'on utilise pour FileMaker Cloud est très spécifique. Hein. Donc elle fait un boulot très bien. Et l'avantage sur Amazon, c'est que vous arrêtez vos instances comme ça. Donc il les fait tourner quand il en a besoin. Et au bout du compte, il dit le coût, hein, est tellement faible, hein, comment on est sûr de pouvoir contrôler en fait son numéro correctement. Donc regardez sur son site, il a fait pas mal de modifications. Il a fait tout un système maintenant où MirrorSync peut travailler avec FileMaker Cloud. Hein. Et il dit c'est l'avantage de Amazon, c'est créer des instances. Ça se fait en 30 secondes. Quand on les utilise pas, on les éteint. Donc et ça permet d'avoir des coûts très faibles en fait pour des services web.
Bonjour. Tu traduis? Ouais. Je suis trop fatigué de parler. C'est un peu marginal, mais j'aimerais savoir si FileMaker discute avec Amazon sur la question d'utilisation des énergies renouvelables pour l'alimentation des clouds.
Renewable energy? They're not. So there's no discussions around. I drive an electric car, but
Par contre, apparemment, enfin, Amazon en Europe sont en train un peu parce qu'ils sont en train d'ouvrir un centre de données au Danemark, à cause de la nouvelle loi sur le GDRP qui sort dans pas longtemps. Donc ils ont une obligation et ils ont décidé de jouer à fond la carte verte. Mais avec les Danois, on est un peu obligé parce que sinon.
Parce qu'aux États-Unis, ils sont comme un peu les mauvais élèves. Quoi.
Aux États-Unis, ils sont un peu les mauvais élèves pour l'instant. Mais par contre, sur le reste de la planète, ils font un effort. Alors après, c'est qu'au début, quand vous voulez faire un centre de données écolo, ça met 2 ans, 3 ans de plus que faire un centre de données normal. Donc le problème après, c'est eux, vu la demande du marché, ils ont fait un peu la partie la plus rapide. Alors, je vais pas trop parler pour Amazon, mais c'est vrai que c'était un des enjeux. Et même sur ce qu'ils sont en train de faire en Europe, même ce qu'ils ont fait qu'ils sont en train de faire autour de Paris, ce qu'ils ont fait à Londres, ils ont beaucoup plus passé sur les énergies renouvelables que ce qu'ils ont fait aux US. Mais c'est vrai qu'en US, ils avaient besoin d'aller très très rapidement dans la création des centres de données. Ce que je voulais rajouter aussi, c'est, je sais pas, donc peut-être sur le site vous avez vu, on a 2 nouvelles sections en fait qu'on a mis pas mal en avant. La première, c'est on a refait le site de communauté pour avoir plus de facilité pour les utilisateurs de trouver les informations, parce qu'avant c'était un petit peu dans tous les sens. On a mis une page en place qui s'appelle App Innovation, donc je sais pas si la plupart l'ont vu, on a quand même un petit peu parlé. L'idée c'est de mettre, donc nous on a mis des fichiers de démo à peu près sous les nouvelles fonctionnalités de la 16. Et l'idée, c'est d'avoir des développeurs comme vous, de mettre des exemples pour que les personnes soient un peu aient des nouvelles idées. Donc on a Yoris, pas encore, il va faire la démonstration, je crois que c'est demain après-midi, sur l'utilisation d'une API de reconnaissance faciale intégrée directement dans FileMaker, qu'il a créé pour un de ses clients qui fait des castings de modèles sur l'Europe. Et en fait, il dit, c'est le client lui avait commencé à en parler il y a 2 ans, et en l'espace de 3 semaines, il allait faire un truc, et le client a dit, c'est l'avenir, c'est vrai que c'est avec les API, on ouvre FileMaker à plein d'autres nouvelles idées qu'on n'avait pas forcément avant. Donc pour tous ceux qui ont fait hier la présentation, enfin le training avec les stéréos, je pense que c'est bien, c'est rentré, et c'est vrai que c'est l'avenir, quoi. C'est le côté où on va essayer de tout forcément essayer de faire dans FileMaker. En fait, ce qu'on va dire, c'est qu'on va se relier à d'autres systèmes, récupérer la donnée, et FileMaker va devenir en fait l'intégrateur de données, et le moteur qui va permettre à l'utilisateur de voir ce n'est correctement. Comme l'exemple qu'on donnait chez iSolution, pareil, en fait, la donnée, il fallait la trouver. Les systèmes qu'ils ont utilisés derrière n'ont pas d'interface, c'est que des services web. Vous allez récupérer de la donnée, et il faut un outil pour pouvoir montrer ces données à l'utilisateur. C'est là où FileMaker a un point qui est relativement bien pour moi, c'est justement de pouvoir permettre à tous ces API d'avoir finalement un outil qui va pouvoir déployer l'app et surtout la permettre aux gens de visualiser les données correctement. Donc si vous avez des fichiers de démo que vous voulez mettre dessus, on en a rajouté pas mal, on en a mis pas mal de ce qui a été fait différentes DevCon en Europe, donc on va mettre tout ça sur le site dans les semaines qui viennent pour pouvoir vous montrer ce qui a été fait. Donc il y a des trucs sympas qui ont été faits avec des date pickers, des Suédois qui sont cités sur les cartes Windows, donc ils ont fait une appli qui n'est qu'en carte Windows du début à la fin. Donc si vous avez des trucs à mettre dessus, allez-y. Au niveau le Custom App Academy, vous avez toute une série de vidéos pour apprendre les bases de FileMaker. Donc actuellement, elles ne sont qu'en anglais, mais on commence à avoir pas mal de demandes en fait par des FBA à travers l'Europe de pouvoir eux traduire ces vidéos et mettre des sous-titres sur ces vidéos. Donc on est en train de travailler avec certains membres pour potentiellement essayer d'avoir toutes les vidéos alors en anglais mais sous-titrées en local. On a des demandes de Turquie, d'Italie, de Lituanie, un peu partout en Europe. Donc on va travailler dessus pour pouvoir en fait permettre à plus de personnes de pouvoir rentrer dedans. Parce que sur le feedback qu'on a eu de la plupart des utilisateurs, et souvent des personnes qui avaient commencé à faire du FileMaker 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, c'est qu'ils n'avaient jamais rien lu. En fait, ils avaient juste en bidouillant, ils avaient appris à utiliser FileMaker, et qu'en ayant des vidéos même courtes qui vous apprend les bases chaque principe, de chaque fonctionnalité, hein, bah, ils avaient finalement compris l'intérêt d'avoir des occurrences de table, de commenter des scripts, enfin, des trucs qui sont relativement basiques pour vous, hein, qui sont souvent pour des nouveaux utilisateurs des choses qu'ils ne font pas, et donc c'est vrai que ça augmente en fait le niveau du développeur, hein, qui comprend mieux ce qu'il. C'est fini? Eh ben merci. Café? Ouais.